You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today the topic that we really need to jump into is around brand protection. This is something that's popping up more and more, and I think it's only going to get worse. I think as we look at what profitability means going forward as the economy kind of slows down, as people are sitting on tons of inventory and where does it go? And then people on the digital side talk about liquidation and where all that liquidated product shows up and overall impact. So we got great friends, partners, supporters of the network over at Vorys. If you've been at one of our events in the past, you probably met them. But Whitney, I'm going to kick it over to you first. We also have Blake on. But Whitney, if you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Vorys eControl, that'd be great. And then we'll kick it over to Blake and you can jump in on the precision eControl. And then we'll kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Sounds great, Aaron. Thank you. And thank you for having us. I'm Whitney Gibson. I'm chair of Vorys eControl. We help businesses control their sales, protect their brand in the age of e-commerce, give them holistic control of their channels so they can grow their revenue and profit. We worked with over 600 brands. We've worked with over 200 brands that do over $1 billion of sales or more, and really help brands end to end, everything from strategy to foundational policies to comprehensive precision enforcement, the impact measurement all the way through. So excited to be here and share our learnings with you. Also have Blake Burrus, who's the new CEO of our ancillary business, Precision eControl, focusing on tech and data. And I'll let Blake just give you a little bit about his background.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Whitney, and thanks, Aaron. Happy to be here today. So as Whitney said, I head up it's a newly formed ancillary business called Precision eControl. And Precision eControl is really it's a dedicated tech, data, software, and analytics business that underpins a lot of the foundational legal work that the Vorys team does. So in terms of using data to identify disruption and quantify opportunities, and really get precise and prioritizing where to focus and get super precise in executing tactics to help regain channel control and then and measure ROI, in real, immeasurable ways, sales lift, average selling price, things like that are directly tied to KPIs. That's kind of the mission. So excited to have a chance to talk with everyone.
Yeah, awesome. So as we kind of kick off this conversation, Whitney, you and I were chatting around what it's going to look like, what growth looks like. And, we're chatting a little bit around, how hard it's going to be. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and what you're seeing in this space and what's to come as well.
Yeah, I think we're at that time of year where people are looking at setting their budgets and forecasts for next year. And what we're hearing from a lot of different e-commerce leaders is I'm feeling pressure from management to really grow my e-commerce next year. But at the same time, I know that the numbers of unauthorized sellers that are showing up in some of my biggest channels on Amazon and Walmart is not only taking my sales today, but I just see it increasing. I don't see the problem going away. And no matter what I do to try to grow, they're going to siphon off a lot of my sales. It's going to be really hard for me to hit my numbers. And so I'm seeing a tipping point for a lot of companies that, sort of lived with it for a while, where the business leaders are now like, we absolutely have to do something or I can't grow as an e-commerce. And not only is it them siphoning off sales, but it's also just the people who lead e-commerce know that their biggest growth tools are the advertising that they can do in those channels, and that they are limited in the advertising when unauthorized sales and other sellers are taking the buy box, and so they can't really compete against the competition and they can't grow their brand. So it's very frustrating. I think that a lot of people are looking to act now because they know if they need to get it under control now so they can go and be able to grow and hit the numbers that they're feeling the pressure to do right now. So it's, I think that's where we are. We can talk about different ways to do that, but that's what we're seeing a lot over the last few months.
Yeah, I think it is that double whammy of it's not only you losing the buy box, but everybody knows Amazon's pay to play at this point in time. Anybody can go search on a product and you'll see of the top 10 listings, there's probably 6 to 7 that are ads. And when you're not getting the buy box, your advertising's not showing up. And if you're not advertising, then you're not getting into the top of search. It's just that conundrum that you get into. And as brands try to figure that out, I think it's especially right now when you talk about growth, and we've seen Amazon cut back on inventory space on the 3P side, cut back on weeks of inventory they're going to hold from like 12 weeks to down to 3. We've got this really crazy Q4 that's going on where people aren't going to hit their number. And yet, next year they're going to be asked to grow on Amazon. And if you have the third parties that are jumping out there, they only make it worse. With
a lot of we've all heard about the excess inventory that's out there. And so that is obviously leading to just a further increase in the volume of discounting and unauthorized sales that's going on. And,
do you think executive teams realize that in the past you literally could liquidate, right? You could literally, if you liquidate now, it ends up on Amazon. Right.
Yeah,
they're in this weird spot where they want the money to close out Q4, but there's going to be an issue in Q1 and maybe all of next year. I mean, there's companies sitting on 40 weeks of inventory.
Yeah, no, what I find interesting is just we're at this moment in time where there are so many brands we worked with that have this figured out. They did it. They started, they felt the pressure 2 years ago. They felt the pressure 3 years ago. And they got their internal leaders together. They said, we don't want any more. And they are brick and mortar retailers squeezing us on pricing because of what they're finding online. We want our e-commerce teams to be able to grow. We want our sales team to have good relationships with the retailers and distributors. We want to maintain pricing stability, have fair for all, and we want everybody incentivized to grow in their own channels. And they evolved their policy architecture for this new world. They went out and did the cleanup. They're in maintenance mode, and it's not an issue. That's just the way they operate. And there's so many companies like that. This isn't like we're sitting here and we're not in early adoption phase. There's a lot of people that have done that, and it's worked. And then you can call them and talk to them and it's great for our company. And then there's so many other companies that haven't even started it. They're just taking punches every day. And there's not a champion within the company that has rallied the key stakeholders in a room and just gotten the alignment, and gone through the policy changes and gone through the enforcement and maintenance to be in a healthy state. It's gotten to the point, and I know it's because I live and breathe it every day, but it's not that complicated. If so many brands can do this, then, it baffles me sometimes that so many brands still sit and just, have not gone to get it done.
But they don't have, there's not awareness. It's interesting. So what you're saying, Whitney, is there's a playbook. There's a playbook for how to do this. Yeah. But there's not awareness of that playbook. So Aaron,
that's exactly it. Just a quick aside. We did Darren from your team, we did a dinner in Dallas and literally, so we're walking through some of the stuff and, one of the business owners, large furniture company, stands up and says, hey, just raises his hand, I should say. It says, my legal counsel says that we can't do anything about this. Mm-hmm. That's what they're literally being told, that, right. Hey, the first sale doctrine, you can't do anything to do it. Are you telling me it could be done? And actually, we can do something about it? And Darren was like, yes, your legal counsel's wrong. So it goes on to It's not only a non-awareness, but also sometimes there's disinformation around the first sale doctrine. And everybody thinks that just dominates and rules everything. And so I agree with you, Blake. It's like there's two pieces of it as well. Anyways, Blake, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but no,
it's right. And I love that story. Marketers, digital marketers, e-commerce marketers, you said they're trying to figure it out. So I'm behind on sales. Why is that? They have plays they run. They go down, they look at their marketing efficiency, they look at their cost per click, they look where they're winning. Like they have like a go down my checklist. Why am I behind? My marketing's not working that hard. Why? You go into this channel, you go into this keyword, you boom, boom, boom. That same kind of discipline or rubric or playbook, it does exist for e-commerce control, but people aren't aware of it as well. You should look at your unauthorized sellers. You got to look at your pricing. You got to this is a discipline. It should be another pillar of what drives e-com success. And you should have your checklist, and you should, as you're diagnosing your brand, I'm $3 million short this quarter. Why? And check all my marketing factors, but I should check all my e-com control factors as well. And it needs to be ingrained as this is part of how I diagnose my brand health, but people aren't using it that way yet.
Yeah, I mean, well, yesterday, right, we did a webinar, and we were talking like a little bit around what are the right KPIs, because what everybody is like living in right now that's trying to tackle this is, the analogy is whack-a-mole that I know a lot of people use is I keep taking people down. And I mean, it was just interesting now you were talking about, measuring the impact, not just the actions. Would love. Yeah.
A lot of the KPIs that are out there, I think of them as they're not outcomes. They're actually input metrics. So things like number of websites that I monitor, or number of channels that I monitor, how often I monitor, or how many infringements I've identified, or how many takedown letters I've sent. Those aren't outcomes. Those are actually inputs into outcomes. And they're not, that's not impact. That's just activity. And so it doesn't really address the root cause. And then B, those don't connect to business KPIs, but the business the KPIs they use to run their business sales and, average selling price and profit. They're not connected to business outcomes. So then they lose relevance, and some of this work is often seen as a cost center rather than a growth driver. And it's because this link is often missing between those KPIs and the business reality.
Yeah, and I think there's so many reasons why that hasn't come to be yet in the industry. But as we at Vorys eControl sort of went on this journey, what I looked at is, as I looked at what was out there, there was a fragmentation. There was technology companies, there was lawyers, there was investigators, and the technology companies wanted to sell some software, and for investment reasons, didn't really want to have a bunch of service. They just wanted to be able to say, hey, I'm a technology company. And they'd go in, and then they may have like a non-lawyer that tries to do some takedowns to the website. But there was no incentive for the data team to focus on outcome or impact measurement because they couldn't drive impact or outcomes, right? They couldn't line it up to the KPIs. And then you had expensive law firms. It's like people wanted to work on the billable hour. So there was really no incentive. So our whole mission was to say, okay, let's bring together brand protection analysts that can do takedowns at very efficiently or lower cost. Let's have lawyers, have investigators. Let's bring in best-in-class data analytic technology team. Let's all sit in a room and say, how should this be done? All right, it's almost like sort of like the Ocean's 11 movie. You bring all these different skills in and you sit in a room and say, how are we going to do this? Right? And then you come up with a plan. And when we looked at it, it started to become clear that there's really a methodology that we follow in these channels, where first is, what is your optimal go-to-market? Like you want to control advertising 98% of the time. You want the buy box 98% of the time. You want to be 1P or 3P. Do you want to have a backup? I don't care. Let's as a business define what your optimal go-to-market. Let's look at how you're going to market in the channel today versus what your optimal state is that you can grow the most if you're operating in that fashion. That's number one. Number two, let's put in the policies that support that. All right, we got to dictate with your resellers where they can and can't sell. We have to have a foundation for gray market. The first sale doctrine will give immunity to people that buy and resell your products, unless you have some way to distinguish your products, and you can do that in a lot of non-physical ways, applications of warranties, satisfaction guarantees, quality control. So we got to have that foundation. And then now let's go to enforce. So we have, Blake spent 20 years at Nielsen. He's really led a lot of the advancements of data-driven precision concepts in marketing and advertising. And so he comes in and says, and I'll let him talk about how a lot of those principles then are applied here. Like, let's not go after everybody, and let's determine precise actions. Let's measure ROI. And then the last thing that they sort of brought to the table is, and I didn't even know these words honestly before he showed up, but this just impact measurement. Like measurement is a whole field of just being able to measure things. But if you go through those 4 steps and you get control of a channel, right, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have ignition behind. It's not only do I get all those sales from the unauthorized into my bucket that we're talking about, but now you are optimized in the way you're performing in a channel, and you can grow. So, and maybe Blake, I think it'd be good. We throw around precision. Precision can mean a lot of different things. Maybe just throw around, each of the different components and how we use data for precision in this world, and how that ultimately leads to higher ROI in this place.
Yeah. And I guess I'll kind of frame it and may draw some parallels between the kind of the world that I've come from, because the parallels are incredible between how you use data to deliver and measure digital media and digital promotions and just digital marketing in general, and how and that recipe that you just described. So in digital marketing, digital media, you use data in 4 ways. You use it to identify an opportunity. Where's a growth opportunity? Could be a pricing opportunity, could be a new segment, could be transaction size increase, but you use data to say, and there are very known ways to like scan the landscape and use data to identify a growth opportunity. Then you quantify, what's that worth if I get this segment to come over? What's that worth if I get somebody to buy me a 6th time rather than just a 5th time? What's that worth? What's the point of penetration worth? $5 million, $10 million, you quantify it. And then you craft a campaign to go reach those people. What channels, who do I want to reach? What channels do I want to reach them in? What's going to be most efficient? Target these people, don't target those people. And you launch the campaign. Very data-driven and really precise. And then you measure. You use often as loyalty card data, other sales data, and you close the loop and you measure the impact, sales lift, ROI. And it's exactly the methodology of that formula you described. And same thing, we identify channel disruption using data. What is disrupting my channel? Am I losing the buy box? Do I have pricing erosion? Is it counterfeits or trademark infringements? Costing me money. You use the data you can point to that, and then you can quantify it. What's that costing me? This seller's cost me this much. The seller's cost me that much. What's it costing me in lost pricing leverage? How's it affecting or eroding my advertising ROI when I don't win the buy box? Quantify it. And then based on that, you know what you care about most, and start at the top of the list where the biggest opportunity is. And then you create a campaign, the equivalent of a campaign. The marketing campaign is an activation. Here, it's an enforcement campaign. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go this tactic against this person, this tactic against that person, and you craft those tactics based on what you know about a seller and what you know about the channel, and that's precise too. And then you measure, you close the loop, you say, what was that worth? Point in time measurement. This used to be here, now it's not. Over 6 months, what did that gain? Like there's very deterministic. You can pinpoint it and tie it, right to sales, and close the loop, and then you show that back to the businesses. And here's what this is worth, and the ROI in the program is always massive, 5 or 10x for sure. There's just so many opportunities to lift and shift the thinking from digital marketing into this space.
But I think it also shifts, right, the idea that this is a cost center right? That's kind of what I am taking away. Is in the past, it's just, if you think about the whack-a-mole setting, right? And it's an expense, right? To have any kind of support in this area, tech or not tech, your legal teams or not legal teams, anything you're going to put in place, it's an expense. And when the answer is, or the results are, hey, I took down 400 people, 4,000, 400,000, at the end of the day, executive teams are like, so what does that even mean? And this is like, again, like the next level stuff that people need to be operating under, right? Which is, that's not just enough. It's not just enough to say, hey, we're going to go tackle it. It's complicated. But in the past, everybody's been going for, they thought that, the silver bullet was just one of these SaaS-based platforms that, basically flags unauthorized resellers. And I like to tell you, like there's no silver bullet. Well, the only silver bullet that's out there is hard work, right? And this is like the evolution of what needs to take place if people actually want to fix the problem. Because what you're explaining is you can actually directly tie revenue, right, or increased revenue to the actions you're taking. That's what executive teams want to buy in if they're going to fund something, especially right now, a lot of belt tightening going on.
Yeah, I mean, the world of zero-based budgeting has been here for a while, and then there's no reason this shouldn't have the same kind of payout calculation, right? That's what executives are saying. Like, basically, this is ZBB, show me the return. And the space hasn't historically been able to do that in the way that they're used to in other disciplines like digital marketing, but we should be able to do that. We can do that.
But I also think we're at a spot where people have to, especially like Whitney's pointing out, like next year, you're going to have to deliver on a bigger number. You're expected to deliver some growth in e-com next year. And this is a major inhibitor to growth. So you can't settle with playing whack-a-mole. You have to go next level. You have to actually set all the policies in place and then actually go remove them. But without, limitless time, effort, money, you've got to be very, very precise in what you're going after. Awesome.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the e-commerce thought leaders, agencies, people out there that are going in and saying, "Hey, I'm here to help grow your brand." They'll typically have their pillars of growth, or the things that they focus on, the things they deliver, the core things they tell brands they need. And you'll see a lot of the most sophisticated. They'll say things like, we have this to drive traffic. We have this to drive conversion. You have to have your price. We have this to help with logistics. And then this pillar's for control. And it's like, you've seen in marketing, product, price, place, promotion. In the e-commerce world, everyone's sort of figuring out what are these core pillars. And the agencies and the leaders will understand that control is just one of those pillars for growth. It's not, I don't even use the word brand protection. I'm like, if you want us to just go after IP infringements and give you a report of how I removed IP infringements or reduce your infringement saturation, we can do that. But if you want us to give you 360 control of a channel so you can operate in your optimal fashion, then I've got to have control of your own resellers. I've got to be able to deal with gray market, and I got to deal with infringements, all with an eye in a precise way that's making sure we're driving to your economic KPIs in that channel. The reason that's so key is like, you're never going to remove anybody out of these channels. So when the long tail stuff is not worth chasing. Like I have a case study after case study where a client comes in, they've got 80 sellers on Amazon. A year later, they've got 60 sellers on Amazon. You know what? The brand's ecstatic because they went from 40% buy box to 98% of the buy box. And they went from 50% of their average selling price to full average selling price. Why? Because you precisely focused on the disruptors. The way these channels work is, the people that they'll put in the buy box are going to be people that have history and meet all this other criteria. So that's why that's where that precision epiphany came, and why we brought in Blake to fulfill this mission. Because I realized that enforcement on the internet is not about taking everything out there and and getting rid of it all. We'll never do that. It's about setting the business KPIs, figuring out what's disrupting them the most and the root cause, then fixing that, and then measuring the impact on that. That's the methodology that you have to employ here. And when I first started talking to Blake, he's like, yeah, that's, it's like same thing. You don't go out and market to everybody. You follow similar. This has been applied in other industries. So that's what's really, it's cool. I think we're transforming the industry, really.
Yeah. Blake, what is it? What are the key KPIs then as people are crafting this? They're taking a step back, and saying, hey, what do I go after? Is it profit? Is it buy box? Is it all of the above? And you might have to pop off mute real quick.
I mean, ultimately, you want to tie it to sales, sales and pricing and sales. And most things, can be. We're working on the one we don't have cracked yet. And we're doing a lot of R&D on is to be able to tie back up to, and I think it's a bigger bucket of money, is really quantifying how much is this disrupting your advertising efficiency and being able to put a number on that. This is eroding your advertising efficiency by half a point or whatever. And that's big dollars, right? That's the further up the funnel you go, the bigger the budgets are, and to be able to quantify that. And it's real. We'll figure it out. We will get to that. And there's modeling techniques and things that you can bring from disciplines like market mix and multi-touch attribution that'll help us get there. So we're working on that, but mostly we're looking to tie to sales and pricing KPIs. There are some times when we're still working at a proxy, like a proxy level, like for infringements, IP infringements, something like reducing infringement saturation over time. There's a lot of utility in that metric. Have I tied it to sales? Not yet. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but that's so much more actionable than how many takedowns, and because you can show progress over time, you can show, relative improvement but generally we're trying to get it tied to sales and pricing KPIs.
Yeah, I think educating the executive team and getting something in front of them is usually got to be tied to cash at some point in time. That's just a reality. Who do you bring into that room? Whitney, I'll kind of kick it over to you. When you're kicking this stuff off, who do you bring into the room? I mean, it's got to be supply chain at this point in time. Obviously, it's marketing, it's sales. Like, who all needs to be in that room for this bigger conversation around if we're going to do this or not?
Yeah, I mean, it can vary for companies depending upon how they're structured. But our typical process is, we'll say, I need to look at your current policies. I need to understand how you're going to market. Our data team then does a collection of what we see online. And then we put all that into here's what's going on. Here's the impact to your business. And then we put together a solution and what we think the positive impact will be. And then we work with whoever our liaison/champion is there. And they will typically bring in the legal team, the head of sales, head of marketing, finance person, and head of eCommerce. And we present it. And it really forces them for the first time to all look at each other and say, what's the best interest of the organization here? And sometimes it's, having incentives to your sales team to overstuff channels and have people look the other way only to turn around and dilute the pricing online and take away sales from e-commerce. Once we point out the sort of negative flywheel that it just comes right back to the sales team and hurts their sales and pricing, then you realize, oh, I'm actually, I remember one company said when they saw our presentation, oh, I met the enemy, it's me. They realize that it's just them, right? And so, you just have to educate people on what's going on and how that's going to hurt. And we have a line that says, if companies don't decide to do it, they'll say, the pain will get big enough. The pain, because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So it's just a matter of time before you go down the pathway of, just trying to be almost like being a controlled organization, and having the right. And a lot of times we tell people, like, it's not about, you don't have to have contracts, everybody. It can be done with policy. It can be done in a way that does not cause massive friction to the business, but still can give you that control you need. So, that's typically who we bring in.
Yeah. Awesome. As we kind of get to the end here, what are you most excited? A couple of things. What are you most excited about? And then any questions for me? The kind of ask the host section. What are you guys most excited about? And do you have any questions you want to randomly throw at me?
Yeah, I mean, I will. I mean, from what I'm excited about is that a lot of times as a lawyer, you get called in, there's a big problem, and then you send a big bill, and the client is kind of mad they got to pay this big bill because it costs them a lot of money to pay a lawyer. And when you do this, when you provide control and they go get growth and they make more money because of you working with them, we've just found our clients to be just really excited and happy and saying, I love working with Vorys. They changed my company. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have it, Aaron. It's like the older you get, the more it's like just you being happy, the people you work with being happy and having fun, right? I mean, it's like when you're young, it's grinding, but that I'm just excited because it's fun to just bring that to people. I think, I don't know, question like, what are you excited about for next year? Like, I'm just curious, Aaron, like, in your growth, your company's growth, like what would be, like, how do you want to change or what do you want to do differently? Then you guys have had a ton of value, tons of connections, tons of education. Do you have any sort of transformation or new goals?
Yeah, I think from our side, it's doing more stuff like this that is easily consumable because we have so many brands in the network now. Digital, they don't have the time that they used to have to dial into hour-long webinars during the day. So we've trimmed some of those down to 30. But doing these one-off, the podcast, what do I get excited about? Well, I love people and I love digital. So I'm blessed to have this job where I just connect with industry leaders from startup to Fortune 100, like pretty much all day, every day. But having the insight to the new tech that has just turned the corner that I can send out to, 50 close contacts to have them evaluate. And then, there are people that are, like you're saying, young and just grinding away at something they really believe in and launching some new technology that changes the landscape. That's fun. That's really cool to see people, really get a business that takes off and to help be a part of that. Just kind of a lead in just a little bit to like what you guys are launching on this precision eControl side. It's something that's going to be, I think, more affordable for a lot of people. And yet it's a game changer that they can just use it in a way that nobody else can see. I mean, it's a tool that you can use. I mean, I've been on the brand side and had to deal with these issues. And it's just to try to explain to the executive team what's going on, executive team who has no idea really what's going on. And we've been trying to educate for years. And yet they don't, up until the past couple of years, e-com hasn't been that big. And so it's been an uphill battle to explain to them. They don't have the time to do it and they didn't grow up in it. And, all this, everything we learned today will, shouldn't say everything, 80% of what we learn about Amazon today will be obsolete a year from now. So they can't stay on top of it. And so what can they stay on top of? Numbers, data, metrics that change the company. And so that's kind of where I sit. I'm pumped about it. It's the same thing. You get, get a little older, it's the job satisfaction. And, you learn that the more people you help out, the more fulfilled you are. And so I'm pumped about finding new ways to help people out. We're going to scale back the number of dinners we're going to do next year. I'm going to ramp up the number of events like this. We're going to do more experiential. We're going to put together an advisory board, a very high level, very integrated advisory board, and just kind of a think tank to sit at the front edge. So the cutting edge of what's going on. Blake, how about you? What are you pumped for? What gets you riled up?
Well, launching this new company is pretty fun. So that's that gets me excited. But it's uncanny what you guys just said about helping people. Right before this chat, I was on the phone with a client who is just having so much trouble, just in so much pain, and can't get control of, and didn't know how. And we lay it out. She's like, this is going to make my life. It will change my job.
Yeah.
Right? It'll change my job. It's going to make her life a different, totally. And that's just it's so cool. It's so cool to see. Yesterday, I was on the phone with someone who, runs a leading skincare brand, and they're on a marketplace. And she said, I haven't won the buy box on my leading item in 3 weeks. We're gonna help her with that, right? There's so much impact to be had, and just watching people, just enabling them to be more successful through some, software and analytics and stuff like that. It's just the impact is fun. It's fun to see, to be able to help people like that. So
yeah, agreed. Well, Blake, Whitney, thanks so much for your time today. This has been an absolute blast. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Everybody take care. Stay safe.